I'm extremely happy to have Christian here, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. Azure. Okay. It's your cloud.
Okay. Thank you, and good morning from my side. I'm happy to be here in Hamburg for the first time. I will talk now for the next 3 hours about side-by-side extensibility with Microsoft Azure. So you will learn everything about the why, the how, the when, everything. Anybody of you, has anybody of you attended the SAP Inside Track Munich this year? Bad luck, folks. It's the same talk. So you can grab another cup of coffee, or if you liked it, you can stay. So, before I start, a few words about me. I'm a consultant at Minosphere, which is an innovation lab of the MSG systems. I'm around the SAP ecosystem since 2005, started as an ABAP developer, and I'm quite active in the SAP community. I'm spokesman of the special interest group of development at the German-speaking user group, Submentor alumnus, and so on. And well, I have some focus topics. One of them is extensibility. That's kind of my partner since I started with SAP, and over the last years I evolved into the area of cloud native development, and especially in the area of serverless. And if you want to keep in touch with me, the easiest way is Twitter. Okay, so let's start with the content. Why side-by-side extensibility? Why should we do side-by-side extensions? We are here at an SAP Inside Track, so the answer is clear. In order to implement the intelligent enterprise. Good reaction? What is the intelligent enterprise? I mean, that's a logical follow-up question, because I would say there is no real clear definition of the intelligent enterprise. It's a word that was coined and was brought up now in the last years, quite pushed by SAP. And when I think about the intelligent enterprise, there is one picture that comes to my mind, which basically has nothing to do with the intelligent enterprise, although it's the next generation. This term, intelligent enterprise, was not invented by SAP. It was not invented in 2010, it was not invented in 2000. The roots of the intelligent enterprise, or the basic idea behind the intelligent enterprise, go back into the 90s. And the birthplace of this idea was this plant. Does anybody, except of the guys that were in Munich, know this plant? It's the NUMI plant. It's an automotive plant in the United States, and it was the most catastrophic plant in the 90s. The error rate, the quality, the error rate was 70%, so nearly every car was defect that left this factory. Basically, every employee was drunk, no job, and well, they wanted to close it down. And then they did one thing. They implemented the Toyota production system here in the NUMI plant. And what happened over the course of 1 or 2 years was they had the same quality standard as Toyota in Japan, which is kind of a gold standard when it comes to quality. Sorry for the fans of German car manufacturers. And this Toyota production system has a few core statements, and they, from my perspective, are the foundation of all the stuff that we call now intelligent enterprise, lean startup, all these fancy things. What is the core of the Toyota production system? It's the goal to achieve a better quality and a higher productivity in your work. Here it was automotive manufacturing. It can be software, it can be anything. And one very interesting part is the second ingredient. It's called Jidoka, automation. So automate the stuff with a human touch. Do not automate everything. Why? Because it's not cost effective. It makes no sense. There are situations where automation makes sense. There are situations where automation is too costly and a human being is more efficient. And the second kind of flavor keep this guy, the human, the user, the customer, in the center. And when you think about this basic points, this is what also SAP pushes with the Intelligent Enterprise. However, it was, well, the basis was laid in the 90s. One short side remark: do you know which plant is now located there where the NUMI plant was? It's Tesla. It's a Tesla factory, so there is something in the water there for quite innovative stuff, and there is something in the water there for quality problems, I guess. Now, as we kind of have a baseline, so what is the Intelligent Enterprise? We have now to think, what can we do in order to achieve the Intelligent Enterprise? And, well, the approach is quite simple from my perspective. So you should have some core processes in place. This is this digital core on the SAP slides. They should follow the best practices. So when your SAP NetWeaver system is basically a Dropbox for Excel up and downloads, you're not ready to start. And now when you have this in place, you can think about, where can I improve my processes? Where do I have potential with respect to quality, to productivity, and to automation? And when I take a look at that, where can I do that with the human user in the center, with a human touch? This is something that's also quite stressed by the robotic process automation. That's now kind of also quite high topic. So this is the starting point, and in order to make it a bit more tangible, I brought an example scenario with me. Quite basic scenario, it's the goods receipts process. So you have a purchase order, your goods get delivered to you, you create the goods movement within your system, and let's say we are at the construction site. This is something where stuff gets delivered, and you get basically a piece of paper in most of the cases, where all the information is put on. And now the guy who gets the stuff has two jobs. He has to transfer the receipt, he has to find the purchase order, look up the order number, transfer the goods movement. And in a perfect world, that's how companies wish to do it, he should scan the goods receipt and attach it to the goods movement. What happens? Well, okay, step one is necessary, he has to do it, but it's error prone. He has to key in the order number by hand on a beautiful SAP GUI screen, but has to be done. And step two, scanning the document and attaching it to the goods movement. This is something that will not happen. This paper sheet will suddenly vanish in a black hole when the goods movement was created. Now, what can we do in order to make that stuff better? What can be improved in this quite simple process? Well, we can make the scanning and attachment of the document a bit more natural, a bit more better fitting into the process by making it the start point, perhaps with a mobile app. We can do a text extraction. So we can identify the purchase order number that is anywhere on the document and make the lookup automatically. We can then search in the backend and make a pre-filled UI with all the stuff that's in the system, so that the guy who enters the data only has to enter the numbers and then send. So that would be the way to go. Now the question is, how do we approach that from a technological perspective? And there are 2 points. It's an SAP Inside Track, so I guess most of the folks here are developers or have technical background. Am I right? That's something that we should keep in our mind. When we deliver a solution, do not use technology for the sake of technology. There is a lot of cool stuff out there, super cool stuff. I like to use it, but when it comes to solving business problems, focus on the business value. That's point one. Point two, do not fall into the trap of the not invented here syndrome. Don't build stuff that others already built 1,000 times and probably much, much better than you can do. My basic example is a user store. Don't implement that. That's there in each and every system. And you can make use of that. The other thing is, when you implement an application, when you do an extension, put the workload where it belongs. If you have a workload that kind of burdens your backend system, that burdens your ABAP system, don't put it there. Put the stuff that belongs into the ABAP system into the ABAP system. That's perfectly okay. But if you have, I don't know, machine learning or something like that, the ABAP system might not be the perfect workhorse for that. On the other side, there is this mantra of keeping the core clean, and now I think it's keeping the core lean. Do not follow that in a blindly manner. If it makes sense, but no problem. Don't push stuff into the cloud if it's much better fitting into your backend. So I heard stories of folks that think about using the ABAP cloud to implement bodies. So make a call from a body on-prem to the ABAP cloud and back to the on-prem system. This is something, I mean, latency is for real, so this might come to some issues, but this is something that makes no sense. So if you have a workload that should be put in your ABAP system, put it there. We're all software engineers. We should know how to put that in without breaking our neck in the next update. Okay, so now back to the mobile app. Let's break down the scenario. We have basically these three requirements. We have the scanning and attaching, we have the text extraction, and we have this kind of searching the order number and pre-filling data on the screen. We now assume we go for a mobile app. So we will implement a UEFI app. So for this, we need to have a UEFI app, some OData service in the back end. Last point is also easy. This stuff can all be done, OData service in the back end, looking up the stuff. This requirement, text extraction and identifying the order number, there's no real functionality within the ABAP stack, right, to do that. So this is something where maybe a side-by-side extension makes sense. Maybe we can use something in the cloud ecosystem in order to do that. So we need some OCR-ish service for this text extraction and maybe some custom code in order to say, if I have now my texts and my numbers, which is the order number? Okay, so this is something, again, SAP Inside Track. What would you choose for that? SAP Cloud Platform and Leonardo Machine Learning, right? Because it's SAP. Yep. I mean, there was a little spoiler in the title, I guess. The cloud ecosystem is completely diverse. So you have all those vendors, the big ones, AWS, Azure, Google, Ali Cloud, which was quite heavily stressed in the keynote in Bangalore. And you have the SAP Cloud Platform. And you can attach all those stuff to your digital form, also to your Business Suite system if you have OData. There is no real issue not to use Azure, not to use Google, if you have stuff that you can use from there. You can also combine clouds. You will see that within my example. To combine SAP Cloud Platform with Azure. Why not? What I would not recommend is use each and every cloud just to make use of it. As a developer, this might be fun. If the guy who does operations on day 2, he will kill you. Because monitoring all this stuff is then super complex. That makes no fun. So try to, from my perspective, focus on one or two things. Okay, as I said, there was a little spoiler in the title, so I will go for Azure because I'm a Microsoft fanboy. And now the question is, how do I solve that on Azure? I have a lot of options on Azure. I can use virtual machines and put on my own machine learning. I can use Kubernetes, super hype, doing YAML files. Or I can go for serverless. And for this demo, I went down the serverless path because serverless, from my perspective, is a perfect way to start stuff within the cloud. Why? Within serverless, you're only responsible for the code that you deploy to the cloud. All the scaling, the starting, is done by the platform. You do not have to take care about it. You can focus on your core functionality, on your business functionality. What's also a point in serverless, you make heavy use of third-party services. All the stuff that you can reuse, like machine learning. If there is a service, OCR services, there are a lot of OCR services. You can use them. You make use of them. And what's also cool about serverless, it can scale down to 0. There is no idle time. So if you have something like this app on a construction site, on Saturday and Sunday, there will be probably not that much work. All the stuff will scale down to 0. You will pay nothing for that, because you pay for what you use in the serverless world. When you use third-party services, there are some metrics behind that. If you go for this function as a service stuff, so AWS Lambda might be something you know, you are built for the time they take to execute. So this is a super fast and efficient way to develop stuff, at least from your side. The guys who make the backend services, well, they have their fun. And it's very well suited for experiments, for proof of concepts, and for production. So there are a lot of proof of concept that went into production, not by incident, but by intention. However, be aware serverless is not the silver bullet, like any technological framework. There are constraints, for example, execution time. A function can only be executed and can run at a maximum time 15 minutes on AWS, 10 minutes on Azure. So if you have a workload that takes longer than 10 minutes, function might not be the perfect choice. Now, how did we solve our problem? As I said, we did some mobile app, an SAP UI5 app, that we connected to the backend over the established way of the cloud connector, using the OData service to doing the attachment of the document, to fetching the purchasing order data. And within the UI5 app, we made some breakout to Azure. And there we made use of the so-called cognitive services, which are pre-trained machine learning services. There is one service, Vision, which allows you to do the text extraction. So they deliver you all the texts on a document and all the numbers. And then we put in some Azure function that did the matching. Is this an order number, or is this the supplier number, or is this a date? This was custom code. We put that into Azure, we integrated that into the SAP UI5 app. And now I will show you in a live demo that was recorded, so it's kind of a recorded live demo, how that works. So what you see here is the classical purchase order. So you have your purchase order number, you have a supplier, you have two materials, and you have now one document where you have the purchase order. This is a real purchase order document. So you have a purchase order number, you have the date, you have the number of the document itself. And what we do now within our app, there are two options. We can scan it and so photograph it, or we can upload the picture. And now we upload this document, and we get this. So we have here now the screen where, based on the document, we fetched the order number, we fetched all the data from the document, so the shipping number, we pre-filled the shipping date with the date when this was recorded. We have the supplier, and we have all the stuff, the material that was ordered. And what you saw, this time that elapsed between the upload and this screen, was real time. There was no fast forward. The document was uploaded, it was sent to Azure, the Azure machine learning OCR service ran, the Azure function was executed, the data was given back to the UI5 app, and the OData call to the backend was made, the purchase order data was fetched, and this screen was built. So this is quite fast. And well, I will not run it till the end, because I guess you believe that you can do OData services to the backend and put in the data and the document. What I like to show you is how can you create Azure functions, because I'm quite sure everybody now wants to do Azure functions because they're cool. And how you can do that locally. 10 or 15? 10. Okay. Working with Azure functions is super easy. It's 4 steps on a Windows machine. Linux and Mac OS is a bit different, but there is a tutorial documentation. I think it's even less steps. So you have to install Node.js on your machine, which you anyway have. You have to install Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which anybody has on his machine, right? Okay. Then you install the Azure Core Tools, which is a simple npm install on your Windows machine. And after that, you install the Azure Function extension for your Visual Studio Code, which is an official plugin. And that's it. Does anybody miss a step here for developing Azure functions, Microsoft Azure functions?
Development?
Do you need an Azure account for that? No. The complete Azure function runtime is open source. What you did here, you installed it on your machine. So you can develop Azure functions completely locally. And yeah, now it's real time for live demo. So what I did is let's see. Can anybody read that also from the behind? Mm-hmm. Okay. I made a little folder, and here is the Azure plugin. What I will do now is I will create a new function project with this plugin. What happens first is it asks me where to store it, and I store it here, as you can see it locally on my machine. Then I have to make a choice concerning the runtime, the development language, TypeScript, JavaScript, C# for sure, or PowerShell. Interesting for all the operations guys here. You can do operation stuff with that quite easily. We take now TypeScript. Then we have a trigger. Somehow this function has to be kicked off. And there are different triggers, different events, how these functions can be triggered off. The easiest one is an HTTP trigger. Or you can use a trigger caused by an entry in a DynamoDB or an event hub or something like that. We go for HTTP trigger. We call it sitHH demo function. And then you have to define the authorization level. Frank is hopefully not here, so we do not care about security. We say anybody can run it. And what happens now is you get a complete scaffolding of your project. So this is your function project. You have your git-ignore files. You have your project.json file. I have to run now a little npm install. So what you have here, you have your package.json, which has some nice build scripts built in. You have kind of a global configuration file, which currently says version 2.0 of your functions. You can put in more there. And then you have the core of the functions, which is the configuration and the code. What is the configuration? Here you find all the stuff that we put in before. The authorization level, the type is triggered by an HTTP trigger. You have something that goes into the function. You support several methods how the function can be called. You can, for example, remove the post. Then no post call is possible. Yeah, and then what comes out. And the interesting part is then the function itself. You have some hello world in Azure Functions. So we say hello sit Hamburg participant. And if we put in a query name or a name in the body, this will give you this response back. If not, we get an error code 400. And what we have to do now is npm run start. And the system builds the stuff, wonderful ASCII art, starts up the Azure Function runtime. So you have now a local Azure Function runtime, and you have an endpoint that you can call on your machine. We do that. Okay, for sure. There was no parameter. So we say name equals, let's say, Peter. good, right? Let's make it a bit bigger.
Hey.
And here we go. So even when installing the stuff on your system and you have an internet connection that is faster than the one in the area where I live, it's probably 5 minutes. You will have your first function running. And if you are like me, you probably make some errors when developing. It would be great if you could debug that stuff, right? So let's put a breakpoint in here. Press F5. Things start up again. The function runtime gets started up. We get all the logs information. The endpoint gets created. And we need a little time in order to let the debugger attach, and now it's attached. And now we can kick off that one again. And what happens is, here we go. We can now debug all the stuff. You have your classical debug console. I know that some like more the Google Chrome debug tools from the SAP community. I'm quite happy with that one. So we can now take a look. Query would be the right one. So we can take a look at all the stuff that is available there. Okay, so that's about Azure Function, and now I'm 100% sure that you're convinced that this is the stuff that you should take a look at this evening. And that was just a start. So the ecosystem around Azure Functions is super vibrant. You have a lot of documentation, a lot of tutorials on the Microsoft documentation side. You can also implement workflows within Azure Functions, which is quite difficult if you think, oh, well, if that scales to 0, I have a problem because the state gets lost. That's where durable functions come into play. It's kind of an add-on to functions. Now V2 was released with some other cool stuff. You can also integrate it with a local database, Cosmos DB, which is the Azure Cloud database, SQL database, non-SQL database, graph database. And anybody here who installed HANA Express? Not that much fun, I guess. 2 minutes and your Cosmos DB is up and running. If you want to do something with Kubernetes, you can go to Project Kida. That's something for the guys who are interested in IoT. If you want to go low-code, go to Logic Apps. And if you want to learn all that stuff, there is a learning path available since 4 weeks, which is super cool because these tutorials hook you up to an Azure Sandbox, and that's completely for free. So you do not have to make any buy-in, put in any credit card number. It's just a sandbox for the tutorial. Okay, so before you now start installing all the Azure Function stuff and bringing down the network, the takeaways. From my perspective, the intelligent enterprise, where all the stuff started, is about, well, delivering value by intelligent automation with a human user in the center, and it's not about fancy technologies. Also, we like using technologies. They are a toolbox, and we should know the tools, and we should apply the right tools for the right problem. Usually, when you want to implement the intelligent enterprise or make some intelligent extensions, you end up in development of add-ons of extensions in your SAP system. And in most cases, you will have extensions within your SAP system and side by side. You have to enable the SAP system, for example, via OData services that are not available in order to make a side-by-side extension run. This is something that you have to keep in mind also from a lifecycle perspective. When you run into side-by-side extensions, usually you have, well, the cloud is a proper place, and you have the freedom of choice, so you can use whatever is available within the cloud. If you like to use Kubernetes, if you like to use containers, go for that. But you have also the freedom of choice with respect to the provider. So there is no must to use the SAP Cloud Platform. From my perspective, serverless is a great choice to begin, and also a great choice to bring to production in a lot of cases. And last but not least, as I said, well, Azure Functions, yeah, they are a really cool ecosystem that you should take a look at if you have the time. Yeah, that's all from my side, and I thank you very much for your attention. we have time for questions, if there are any.
2 or 3 questions, of course.
So if there are questions, feel free. If there are no questions, there will be no break.
Now it's, thank you, Christian.
Welcome.
Now it's Christian, the other one.